Commissioner Scott, ready when you are. And we'll want to make sure you're unmuted.
I'd like to call the Health Service Board Governance Committee meeting to order, and we will now have item 1, which is, or item 2, which is our roll call.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. The call to order at 1:02 p.m. and agenda item number 2, roll call. Roll call, Commissioner Randy Scott, Chair.
Present.
Commissioner Zvansky.
Present.
And Commissioner Zvansky. Okay, I heard you very faintly. Commissioner Zvansky's here, and we're working on your audio. Chair Scott, we have quorum.
Thank you, and I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Commissioner Karen Breslin as well. She's not a member of the committee, but we welcome her presence today as well. Thank you. We'll now go to item 3.
Agenda item number 3 is general public comment, which is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction, including anything that is not on the agenda or requesting that the board place a matter on a future agenda. This is a discussion item. And our remote viewing public comment instructions are being displayed, and I will verbally announce those.
Switch audio, speaker, and microphone settings, WebEx.
So public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length, unless the board president deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. As a reminder, a caller may ask questions of the policy body, but there is no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. When your 3 minutes have ended, I will thank you for your comment. You'll be placed back on mute, and the moderator will unmute the next caller. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available by dialing the number on the screen. The dial-in number is 415-655-0001, again 415-655-0001. When prompted, use access code 2494-493-5372, again 2494-493-5372, and then press pound and pound again. You will enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line and dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. We will now wait for our moderator to notify us of any callers in the public comment queue.
Board Secretary, we have 2 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line, you must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Commission Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Agenda item 4.
Agenda item number 4, initiate review and edit of the Health Service System Board governance policies and terms of reference. This is an action item.
Excuse
All
me,
right,
Oh, let's just take a pause. I know one of our commissioners, Commissioner Zvansky, is trying to connect in. Commissioner Zvansky, would you like to check your mic one more time?
can you hear me?
It's still faint. I can.
Still faint. Okay.
That's getting a little better though.
Okay. Thank you. We're working on it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Chair Scott?
All right, thank you. This effort today will be to actually do what I would call a page-by-page review of the current document which was attached to the meeting agenda of the terms of the policies and terms of reference. I'd just like to set the parameters for our discussion today, and in case there are needs to be specific questions raised or what have you. We'll take each policy in turn, and I would like to say that we've had a legal review from our counsel, Eric Rappaport, as well as our CFO on the finance side, some of the financial policies for which we have an accountability. And they submitted their documents to Holly, and I've had a chance to review them. And with Eric's permission, I'm going to use his as the starting point for our policy review, if you will, because he had many what I would call editorial edits, as well as some substantive questions. I have also, when we get to various sections, if you will, where I know that Larry Liu has made a comment or raised a question or what have you, I'll have him chime in or clarify what he made in terms of edits. We have a responsibility for 3 policies, and amongst others, but 3 that I'd like to refer to at this point. And these are policies on investment, item number 209, the contingency reserve policy and methodology, number 210, and self-funded plan stabilization policy, number 211. Eric had recommended, and I concur, and that these probably need to be reviewed by Aon before we finalize them. And so we won't be discussing those 3 today, pending that review. I'm also given to understand that Larry Liu has reached out to Aon regarding these policies. So once we get those back, we will share those with the committee, and we can talk about the timing if Larry has any further information on those 3 policies. Larry, can you speak to this at this point?
Certainly. This is Larry Liu, Chief Financial Officer for San Francisco Health Service System. Thank you, Chair Scott. I did reach out to Mike Clark, our consulting actuary from Aon, with regard to these 3 policies. He responded back that my comments were consistent with his comments. However, if you wish to defer finalizing and reviewing the policies as a board action, we can do that, as those policies impact the rate setting and also the establishment of the contingency reserves, as well as the IBNR. Those are done at specified periods in time during the year, during a normal course of business of the board.
All right, so Aon has concurred with your edits, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
They have? All right, then we can take them up today and review them as well. I didn't know where that was in terms of process, but if they have looked at what you have edited, we can take a look at it and act on it today as well. All right.
Certainly. Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Scott,
Okay.
if I may just correct for the record, I think you mentioned the investment policy. I think you were actually referring to the IBNR policy. There's 3 policies. The investment policy would be a 4th.
Oh, sorry, that's correct. That's that. Thank you,
Okay.
Director Yan. It's number 210, 211, and 212. Those are the 3 that we were seeking Aon to review, and Larry has reached out to them, and they are concurring with his edits, and we'll bring those up, if you will, at the end when we get to that portion of the document. Yes. Commissioner Zvansky, please.
You can hear me now, or you can't?
Ooh.
We can now. I can hear you now much better than when you started speaking just a moment ago. So
Oh, okay.
continue.
And now the picture has disappeared. But I have fixed the IBNR, and what is the 5th one? Would you repeat that for me, please?
Yes, I will. It's policy number 210, the contingency reserve.
Right. Oh, okay.
Policy 211, self-funded stabilization. and policy 212, IBNR reserve policy.
Thank you very much.
And Larry has reached out to Aon. They concur with his edits. And so we will review those three today as well. And he can speak to the edits that he and Aon have concurred on. All right. So with that, we're going to start at the very beginning. I've asked Holly to bring up the
Thank you very
draft
much.
reviewed by the council.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. I'll be bringing that up momentarily.
Actually,
Or
I think it'd be preferable if you use another draft to go through. I think my substantive comments were pretty minimal, but that draft is a privileged document.
Okay, all right.
I should have called you, and I thought we were going to have, I thought most of the comments I had really were just editorial cleanup. And I'm happy to have a discussion on any substantive issue as we go through it. But
Thank you,
I feel
Counsel.
obligated to tell you that it'd be better to just go through another draft if you can.
All right.
Okay,
Holly, will you bring up Larry Liu's draft?
yes, I'm sure that's a great draft.
okay, yes. Give me one moment. Thank you.
Thank you, my counsel.
Yeah.
Just keep
I'm
us
sorry. I
clear.
should have
Thank
called
you,
you.
Counsel.
I didn't realize we were doing that.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Follinsby. You know, I appreciate all of the navigating through all these drafts and everything. There's a part of me, and I think that it'll become self-evident, and maybe it'll be okay to finish the work of this committee today. But I think it would have been nice as a member of the committee for us to be able to review the substantive changes before the meetings, so that we're not faced at each point, because what may seem, routine to one may be feel substantive to another, or whatever. So I understand the timeline and the importance of getting this done, but as a general process, maybe we should consider a little more advanced integration, so that we can actually review what we are going to vote on to approve, rather than trying to integrate multiple drafts, some of which we can't even see.
Well, I would concur with that, Stephen, and I was made aware of these two documents like a day or two ago. I mean, in terms of their substance, and they certainly can be sent to the committee post the meeting, and you'll see that what we're describing, what Eric has described, and what Larry is describing, are really more editorial comments, and they've raised questions that say we need to discuss this as a committee, which we will do.
Yeah.
So, they're not major substantive changes from either one of the documents.
All right.
And we can just address that as we go through, where they're saying, here's something you need to discuss or review. That's what we will be doing today when we get to that portion.
And that's fair. And I'm not trying to point fingers. I just think that as
I understand.
sort of operation, it would be nice if we could have thought about it before listening to the explanation, because I think we want to finish today with a document that we can then forward to the full board and not have to either meet again or something. So,
well, and to that point, based on what we do and how we are discussing this, if we feel that we're not ready to present this to the board, then it will be moved to another month, and we will come back in January with a final review. And based on what we did the last time around, that's exactly what we did. We figured that we needed to have a final look at what we were going to present to the board the following month. And if you notice, the date of review and amendment was in the current document in February.
yeah.
So that very well may wind up being a February amendment date as well, once we have gone through our discussion today.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. So let us begin. Holly, can you bring up Larry Liu's version?
yes, and I just would like to take the opportunity, if you feel it's a good time, to check with Commissioner Zvansky, just to check in with her if the sound is coming through as we're starting our discussion. Commissioner Zvansky, would you like to unmute? I know our tech support is online helping. So if it's not coming in clear right now, feel free, Commissioner Zvansky, in the moment of a discussion to let us know that you're able to. And I'll pull up the document to get us started. And it does look to be coming through on my end. Can everyone else?
Can everyone see?
Okay, now I'm back up again. Sorry. The whole thing keeps disappearing from my screen, so I apologize. I, I would love to concur with Dr. Follansby and Randy. I had hoped that the document I received would have had some of the typical edits where we see what's being added, what's being deleted, so that the document that I spent a lot of time reviewing would be easier to work with today. And I guess we don't have that. And what we're going forward with is hoping to get that from both our city attorney and from I guess it's Larry Lou and
Eric.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like,
I know from Ed and Larry and oh, great haircut. I can see you.
Just so that we're clear, I want to be very, very clear with everyone. Eric reviewed the document. He has made some formatting changes, some other edits. That is largely what his document was.
Okay.
But because he had done it throughout the whole document, I had suggested, and now he's corrected me on that point, that we start with his as a point of review. So now we're going to be using Larry Lou's document, and Eric will chime in where he had either a question that we needed to discuss or another issue.
right.
Just
And I
so that
think
we're all clear.
generally, yeah, and I think generally, having listened to the discussion to date, there's not that many substantive issues in this. And that when we get through this, we'll be able to address all of the substantive issues, and we will get a unified formatted document with all the typos and the grammar and the font and getting rid of the passive voice that I did to, just to try and clean it up. But I think if once we get through this process and focus on the substantive issues, there's just really not that many, and that overall the governance policies in terms of reference have worked quite well for the board over the last 10 years.
So we start with page 1, and one of the edits that I found to be interesting. No, start with the cover page, Holly, back up to the top, right there, please. It says reference, and that is misspelled throughout the document in terms of titles for policies and so forth. So please know that we will correct the spelling of reference. It's REFERENCE. So we'll correct that throughout the document.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Claire. I didn't hear what you said.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's starting on the title page, and anywhere else it appears in terms of the document, we will make that correction. So that's the title page. We will take off the prior board secretary's name as well. All right, so let us move to the table of contents. This was a major change from the last time when this was revised. We created terms of reference numbers. Starting the terms of reference series would be from 101 to 199 in terms of any expansion, just so that you're clear. And then the policy numbers start at 201 and go up to 299 in case we need to add any policies. So that was a major change in terms of how this was organized from the prior period. Next, after the table of contents, we go to page 2, which has the introduction, general duties, plan and benefit plan adoption and benefit design. On to page 3. And Larry, you had a point that you were making here around fee schedules as it's listed in paragraph B. So can you clarify what you mean?
Sure, Larry Liu, Chief Financial Officer, SFHSS. Want to clarify that the term fee schedule for health plans, health insurance industry refers to what you specifically pay providers at a unit cost, relative to the claims that they submit. So I don't think the intent here was that the board, is trying to set those rates, because that's something that we, for our self-funded and flex-funded plans, pay administrators to administer for us.
So you're suggesting that that be changed to the adequacy of member rates?
Right.
Is there any objection by any of the members of the committee?
No objection from Follansby.
All right. And none from Scott.
Changing fee schedules to member rates.
Member rates instead of fees, the adequacy of fee schedules would be changed to member rates.
That works. All right.
All right. Continuing on, there were no further changes suggested on that page. Going to page 5. So, no, I think you're ahead of me a bit.
That's page 4.
Page 5, it goes investment, the plan adoption, board governance. Page 4, investment, administration, benefit administration, investment administration. And then Larry has made a suggestion that we might want to reference the terms of reference about our investment policy. That's just a note. All right. Moving further. Okay, Larry, in the rates and accounting area, you've made some wording changes here. So would you explain those, please?
Sure. Just to clarify that the previous language referenced only the self-funded plans, and many of these policies apply to the self and flex-funded plans, of which we have the Blue Shield, and then we're entering into a new one with HealthNet. So I just wanted to put a clarification on that by adding flex as well as self-funded.
Flex and self-funded plans
Right.
is what you're adding or suggesting. Okay. And then the next suggested change.
The next suggested change was to, again, another clarification that as it's currently stated, appropriate reserve targets really, and then the same sentence talks about the IBNR. So really the first reference to reserve, just a clarifier to say that that's the contingency reserve, and then finishing out the sentence with IBNR. So it's just
Okay.
more clarification.
So it'll be adding the word, just to make sure I'm clear, so it'll be adding the word contingency to the current
Yes.
word reserve. So, okay. Yeah, all this seems very,
Yes.
this is very good. I appreciate all of this. Thank you, Larry.
Okay. And then, Larry, you've become very specific is in the next edit that you've made. I find that to be curious. So will you explain?
Sure.
Part here in 18.
Sure. Part of the 10 county, what we know as the 10 county survey, I read through the ordinance, and it does say prior to the second Monday in January of each year, or at such time as consistent with the plan. So just want to clarify that those are the requirements as stated.
All right. If it is in the ordinance, so why don't we put that down as the introductory statement per city and county of San Francisco ordinance, make a specific reference to the ordinance, whatever the number is there, and then what you've added would be placed there. If that's in the ordinance, we can make reference to the ordinance per that ordinance and then make the statement. That's a suggested change. Is there any comment from the committee on those changes?
No, so my understanding is that we would add the wording per the city ordinance, whatever it is.
Right.
Or at such time as consistent, because it allows for,
Yes,
is that right? So
that's correct.
Yes, yes.
that's fine. That seems good.
Yeah, as you set the rate calendar, that's the time you set to see and review the 10 county survey.
Okay. Moving forward, 19, and you say the board shall, and then there are a series of letter items there. So you said S/B rates. What rates are you talking?
Sure, I'm referencing that it should be rates as opposed to costs, because costs are costs as opposed to the premium rates that are set.
All right, so the board shall ensure historical records on rates are maintained, not costs are maintained, is what you're suggesting.
Right, right.
Okay. And in D, you've made a change there to clarify an annual independent financial audit, substituting for the words the external audit.
Right. This
It
is
would be changed to annual independent financial audit.
All seem very appropriate. Thanks again, Larry, for after years. Thank you for these clarifications. And
Right. Okay.
Can we
Claire,
go back
do you have
to the costs are maintained, the rates? We really, are we really dealing with rates? Look at the costs.
This is
I
the
didn't
board.
hear all of that.
Yeah, the board secretary.
You-
Commissioner Zvansky, we are having a difficulty hearing you, and I think I'm going to connect you with our tech support again, and perhaps you may need to actually call in so that we have the clearest connection. We don't want to miss your comment, of course. So I've made a note that we're on page 5 right now, and Chair Scott, if you deem it okay, then we can get her back in connected clearly and then come back to this.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Zvansky, we'll connect you with our tech support one more time. Thank you, Chair Scott.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Zvansky.
All right. So then going to page 6, Larry, you've provided again clarifying comments on and B, we say annual administrative department operating budget, and what you've done is to clarify that it's the general fund, the annual general fund, and the healthcare sustainability fund budget. That's your suggested change.
Yes.
All right. Commissioner Follansby, do you have any problems with that?
no, not at all.
Okay. Next on page 7. Larry, you've raised a question here. We say on page 7 and 26, the board recognizes that neither effective nor efficient for the board to be involved in the selection of all service providers. Accordingly, the board shall be responsible for approving the awarding of final contracts for the following primary service providers named below. And it says A, actuary, and then B is insurance carriers, and you have added or plan administrators. Is that correct?
Correct. Just a clarification that we use plan administrators for our self and flex funded plans.
All right. Do you have
Agree with
any
that.
problems with that?
I agree with that. That's good.
Okay. He's correct. He's edited or corrected the word coordinator in 27 at the bottom of the page as well. Okay. Next, page 8. This is on monitoring. No suggested changes there unless there are changes by members of the committee.
No changes.
Okay, and page 9, the same, unless there are changes by the committee. And we'll recognize that Claire may come back and have changes on a number of these pages. All right, the next is President, on page 10, President of the Health Service Board, terms of reference. Page 11. No proposed changes there. Page 12. Executive Director terms of reference. No suggested changes there unless there are changes by the committee.
None.
Page 14. No suggested changes unless there are changes by the committee. And then we're into
There's only,
terms of
I'm sorry, there's only an editorial, I think in, under monitoring and reporting, item number 12, and that the operations of the SFHSS are effective. I think it's just a editorial change and not of effective.
Okay. Okay, that's in number 12 on page 14.
Yes.
All rather than or. Yes, I agree with that. Okay, page 15. And here, Larry, you said that this is the Budget and Finance Committee terms of reference. And here you have suggested on page 15, a little further down the page, right there. Thank you, Holly. That this step can be bypassed. Can you explain what you mean by bypassed? And we can discuss this.
Sure, maybe bypass is not the best use of the word, but just reflecting upon the last 2 audits that I've been a part of, we had the auditors present the audit results directly to the board and did not present it to a finance committee first. Having read this version of the document, it would give the impression that that was a misstep in the protocols. That if audits should go to that committee first and then to the full board. So one way to have everything kosher is to recognize that those audits and examinations could go directly to the board if desired by the full board. So that was the intent I was trying to get with that comment.
I see. Well, let's see. The steps that are being the items that are being met shall provide clear direction to the external auditor is accountable to share the report with the board. That has been our assumption. This is stating that this committee will provide the assurance that that's done. That's to the full board. Now, there may have been somewhere in our history where this step wasn't followed, and that's why this has come up as a kind of stopgap or safeguard that, that the independent audit is reviewed by the full board. And if there are issues that would come up during the course of the audit, then rather than the whole board trying to deal with that, that would be the first level of review. So I'm suggesting that it's probably somewhere in between what you have stated and what is written here. There should be at least an initial presentation, can be an initial presentation made to the Budget and Finance Committee, or they can elect not to do that in consultation with the president, just say that as far as we know, it's a clear audit, so let's present it directly to the board.
Yeah, it's probably something that our attorney might want to review, because I agree with that. I mean, I think we've been very fortunate because of our COOs over the years that the reports have been basically quite uncontroversial or without serious errors. But should those occur, rather than first present them to the full board for discussion and response, it seems like that maybe the committee would be the appropriate place should the report require more or deeper discussion or investigation. So I think I'm concurring with you, Chair Scott, about this. And so maybe we need to think about how that could be operationalized in this document.
I totally concur with that. I
Okay.
think we need to keep the Budget and Finance Committee listed and involved. It's up to us whether or not we decide to present to the full board. But I think we absolutely need to keep this option.
Yeah, so maybe we can just put in some language. This step may be bypassed if, if appropriate, it's determined by, agent. We could come up with some ability to bypass, and then obviously in the case where we start to get some negative finding, which we have not had, as far as I can recall.
Right.
I think we could, that's going to be a non-standard response anyhow, and which could include a Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and might include some other responses as well.
Would it be appropriate to say maybe at the discretion of the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee?
Yeah.
The step could be, bypass something like that. So we hand it to somebody from the board who would have oversight, and that would be the appropriate person in my mind.
Yeah, in consultation with, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, if it is the chair, in consultation with the president of the board.
And the HSS, and the HSS director.
Director, yes, that there would be some consultation if they are electing to go directly with the if the decision is being made that there are no findings, no issues, and we're recommending that it be presented to the board, that the chair would do that in consultation with the president and the executive director and the CFO. You see what I'm saying?
I'm comfortable with that. I'm very comfortable with that.
So that there at least there's some level of pre-discussion. We're not going to have a committee meeting on this because that's going to be redundant. And I'm recommending to you, and in consultation with the CFO and the executive director, that this be presented directly that the report from the auditor be presented directly to the committee or to the board for its review. So
I'm comfortable with that.
I will serve as the Thomas Jefferson to work with the executive secretary around this particular issue, and we'll come back with some changed language here, if that is okay with everybody, rather than trying to wordsmith this today.
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. The idea would be the Budget and Finance chair, in consultation with board president, CFO, and executive director, can make a recommendation for the report to be submitted directly to the board. That's the gist of it. Is the committee okay with that? With this, that roughing out of the idea?
Yes, I am. This is Commissioner Follinsby.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Zvansky?
Yes, I agree.
All right. Now, you're still breaking up, but you want to try to go back to page 5, the item that you were talking about where we put member rates versus cost?
Yeah, I was just, I apologize. I was confused by that because I thought that we actually monitor our costs and not the rates. That's why it says ensure historical records on costs are maintained. Am I wrong in that assumption?
Larry?
Yeah, this may be just, my sort of frame of reference in terms of costs for health benefits, the cost of care, and those types of reports are many. The overall cost and the annual cost is reflected in our financial statements. My read on this was to really keep track of the historical records in terms of like the premiums that are set and charged to employees and retirees. That's how I was.
Well, why wouldn't we be doing both? Yes, we have these monthly reports. We have the annual audit that really talk about the overall cost, if you will. But we're also have a record of member rates over time. And we've seen graphs of either at some board meetings of how either member rates have increased year over year or trended by carrier over the past 3 or 4 years. So it would be, in my mind, to say both member rates and costs, because we're kind of doing both.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Commissioner Follinsby?
Well, yeah, I think we're wordsmithing a little bit. I mean, costs in my mind, if one of our vendors charges us, so much for a box of Kleenex, what is actually their cost? And what we're only monitoring is really the charges, the rates. We're not really delving in to the costs within each of our, sort of rate schedules. And so I sort of think that what we look at really are rates, and we don't really break down what the costs are of these services necessarily in terms of the what our vendors or health plan carriers are doing. But I'll go with whatever people want. If maybe I'm off base of that.
I think you're right, but we're also getting these other financial points submitted to us regularly from the CFO, as well as we look at overall cost trends, if you will, in certain areas, in pharmacy drugs, what have you. So I think we're getting data on both health benefit costs as well as how they translate into member rates.
Yeah, I'm just not sure we're actually charting. We get reports on how much insulin costs in this country, but I don't know that we've ever looked at how much we've paid for insulin for our members who need insulin. So
I understand. So we have done that when we get into prescription drugs.
Yeah.
We've had detailed reports on the types of high cost cancer,
right.
So I'm just saying, I think we're getting a little bit of data on both.
Okay.
And it's a matter of, knowing that some of these are directly translating into member rates and others are driven by market forces.
Okay.
So that's what that's why I'm saying I would submit that it's kind of both.
Okay.
Over time.
Good with whatever. It's fine.
Okay.
Okay,
So we will add member rates and costs to that.
Larry, are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, then I am.
Okay, thank you.
And Chair
Me too,
Scott, if I
me too.
Chair Scott, if I can just jump in for a second, because I know we are able to hear Commissioner Zvansky, and I know it's a little bit hard now because you are dialed in, Commissioner Zvansky, to the phone, so we can't connect any other way. But the final tech tip for you, Commissioner Zvansky, is you have to mute your computer, because we're hearing you through the phone, and we're hearing both of you from the computer and the phone. So if you mute your computer, then we'll just be hearing you through the smoothest connection on our phone line.
I hear an echo also, but I have been muted on the.
On the computer. If you mute yourself on your computer, I think the echo might go.
So yes.
Does that work now?
No.
It doesn't seem to. But you're clear.
Yeah, I'm hearing a great echo.
So Commissioner Zvansky, it does sound like we can hear you. So why don't you hang up on your phone line? And that way you'll just be unmuting your computer. Let's test that just for a moment. Speak one more time. Thank you for everyone for being patient while we just make sure all of our commissioners can contribute to the discussion today. And if it's taking a bit longer, then again, we'll reach out to you now that you're just on your computer, Commissioner Zvansky.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you hear me? No.
No, it seems like we'll still need to connect with you offline. So we'll be urgent with that.
Okay.
And
So we're
Commissioner
now
Scott,
back at
yeah, tell me which page.
Page 16 is the next one. Annual budgeting process, other. It's the final actions of or final terms of reference for the Budget and Finance Committee on page 16. Right? The next is page 17 with the terms of reference for the Governance Committee. And I didn't see anything in here that needed to be edited or changed. And I would call on the committee members if they concur.
No problem for me either.
All right. Then the next is page, after that terms of reference, the next one, we begin our policies beginning on 201. Policy 201 is the board operations policy, covering the composition, the election of the president and vice president, board committees.
Call back yesterday. When you call back, we're able to hear.
Meetings. That's on page 20. The board committees are listed, that how we structure our committees and so forth, that we have two, budget and finance and governance. Then on page 21, it gets into meetings of the board and its committees.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Scott, can maybe it was just me, but going back to the section under policy guidelines, board composition, number 2. Yeah, I found that statement. I'm sorry, two. A little confusing because it said it consists of, the board should consist of 7 members. And then in that statement, it lists 6. Then 3 says that 2 of those members are appointed by the mayor. 4 adds the 7th, which is the appointed by the controller. And so, I just found it a little confusing that when you say 7 members and you add up the listed members, there are only 6. And so I don't know if that's just me being kind of simplistic, or whether we should mention the 7th and then clarify in 4 like we do. We mentioned the 2 who are appointed by the mayor in 3. You see what I'm saying?
You know,
All right.
can you hear me? Can you guys hear
Yes.
me? I
Commissioner
went around and round with that and realized that number 2, board composition, says that it consists of 7 members. 1 member of the Board of Supervisors, that's your first member. Then 2 members appointed by the mayor, then 3 members elected. So what happened was I missed the 1 member of the Board of Supervisors appointed by the president. And that's how it ends up. By the time you get down to the controller, that ends up with 7.
Yeah, I
But
know.
if you miss-
The composition says 7. That's exactly right.
yeah, but the
it just-
first one is the member of the Board of Soups.
Yeah,
Then
I agree. It would be
2
easier in retrospect to just list all 7 in the paragraph 2. I think that's a good fix.
Yes.
perfect.
And then you can clarify in 4 that the member of the controller, how that happens, that the process is. But yes, I agree. That's what I'm looking for.
Because it was a
Thank you.
charter amendment. Yeah. That was.
Could I ask a
2000.
question?
Eric,
I'm just not sure on what you're saying there. I see that as it looks like a big mistake to me. They should mention the controller as one of the members on that number 2, and they don't mention it.
That's
Yeah,
what
we
I'm
should.
saying.
Yes.
And
that's what
that was-
I believe. So Eric, will you make your suggestion again, just to clarify?
I think it
for
should
everyone?
be there.
That was Proposition C in 2011.
Well,
that
right, but it's
eliminated my
there.
seat and replaced it. And now it's back in, and that's why I think it was added as a different section.
But we can
Yeah, so
correct
we
it
can-
now.
So Eric, would you please clarify how you think this should be?
So for
suggested?
2, we can delete the last and then do semicolon and 1 member appointed by the controller,
Right.
confirmed by 2/3 of the board for Charter Section 1200, and just add that to the end of Section 2.
All right.
You can leave out the process in 2 because you addressed it in 4. We're not going to get rid of 4.
Fine. That's
So-
fine. And 1 member appointed by the controller.
Period. And then in
Period.
4 clarifies how that happens. So I would support that. Thank you.
Okay, and I
you.
will ask Holly if she's gotten that, and made a note around that particular area.
And I'd
Number
like a
1.
clarification. When it says confirmed by a 2/3 vote of the board, does that mean the Board of Supervisors, or does that mean us? Because I don't believe we should be approving any appointee. We don't approve the member of the Board of Soups or the 2 appointees from the mayor. Why would we be appointing the appointee of the controller unless that's part of the charter amendment, which I don't recall?
I think it,
that was
I will
part-
check. I think it is, because that was such a controversial decision.
Right.
Thank you,
All right,
Sean
so-
Ellsburn. Okay.
So
You're
Eric will cross-check the charter on this. Holly, I'm calling you out to confer and work with Eric to rationalize these sentences, if you will, so that they are consistent, to show that the board is made up of 7 members, and listing how the origins of those 7 members. Okay?
Yes,
So we
board
all
secretary
agree.
will, yeah, I can
Okay.
work with Eric. Absolutely.
Work with
And-
Eric on this, and he's going to cross-check the charter to get at whether we're talking about a 2/3 vote or not. Are,
unless- And
is everyone on board with this?
Yeah.
Commissioner Follansby,
Yes, thank you very much.
Commissioner Zvansky.
Yes, I agree. And I would like to also ask, one of the things I found confusing was the way this document was formatted without the indentations. And I know it's a lot of extra work, Holly, but if,
Well, no, Clara, I would suggest that
Will
that
not
is
do
part of
that.
what Eric's review has done.
okay,
He's gone through and done a lot of that already in his rendering to us.
thank you. I I submit. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So if Holly accepts all of his changes, you'll find that there will be indentations and so forth in this. All right. So we're past item, page 19, page 20. Page 21, meetings of the board and committees, committee meetings, teleconferencing. Now that I found to be rather interesting, and no one, I don't know, Eric, if you put a comment around that or not. We were prohibited by law from teleconferencing. Didn't say anything about video conferencing. And so I don't know if we need to address this now because we're in this new reality that we have been having meetings via video conferencing, not in person, and so forth. Eric, do you have any opinion about how we might or may not need to clarify this?
You know, when I read that, I was thinking, well, we've gone and we did this because of COVID. And I was, I guess, naively hoping we would get out of COVID and go back to these rules at some point.
Yeah.
And obviously the COVID rules come from, you know, the mayor's authority under the charter state law and kind of and so if you wanted to, we could, you know, reference what's gone on under COVID, these emergency, you know, you could say, except in an emergency due to a global pandemic, when all of these rules are suspended and we're allowed to have video conferences.
I think that's a great
Well,
idea.
and I would say it may be something in case of emergency, because it may not be pandemic, it may be another type of an emergency, earthquake, what have you. So I'm just saying that we need
Okay, so
to
we could
at
add
least,
in a sentence, unless, you know, due to emergency, and it's allowed for by under, you know, state and local law.
right, something like that. I just to be clear, because we have had this in place now for nearly 2 years.
Right.
And there, if it isn't this, it may be something else that we're operating under.
Or
So,
would it also be or declaration? I don't know if.
No, I'll come up with a language that allows sort of an exemption to these rules, you know, during an emergency, or is otherwise allowed under state and local law.
Right.
This is Commissioner Follinsby. I assumed that we were operating this way because under 25 as provided for by law, because if you remember at the November meeting, we actually extended our video conferencing for a month to cover, because we had an exemption under, you know, guidelines or law or however you want to say it.
Ordinance.
That expired. And so we actually extended it. So we are still operating under this way. It's just a matter of cleaning up the terminology, but it won't change our practice. I don't want to change our practice.
no, and I wasn't suggesting that at all. I'm just saying that this makes a blanket statement that we may not participate, and that's not entirely true.
Well,
we have been participating. So we need to at least acknowledge it, and we'll rely on Eric to draft some language
It's
to
been
that
by
effect.
ordinance. Can we move back up to meetings of the board and 21A?
Yes.
I was rather stunned to see that a specific room was mentioned in terms of when we meet in City Hall. If we're moved to some other room or those meeting rooms no longer become available, but we are required to meet in City Hall, then we can meet in City Hall, but we could meet in other places. It just seems very limiting to specify a room number.
I think we have to do that under the Brown Act for regular meetings. You have to actually identify a specific location. And then if it's at any place other than that location and time, it becomes a special meeting. So.
Oh, so it's not just City Hall being the location. It has to be as specific as the room.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Okay.
I mean, we've been in that room for 15 years.
I know.
I assume if they change it, it would be if they made a permanent change, then we would come back and redesignate make this edit.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We're now on page 22. No changes suggested. 23, no changes suggested. 24. These are all under board operations, the board operations policy, and then it goes down to our level of review and so forth and so on. The policy history and review on page 25.
But on page 24, it talks about taking a vote on any action item. And what I notice is that we often have public comment after discussion items. And I believe we're not required to do that. Or are we doing that because it's a good idea? I mean, that's why I read number 53, and my understanding in other commissions is we only take public comment on action items.
Well, ever since I've been a part of this board, we've taken public comment on all actions items on our agenda. That's been our practice here. So Eric, ever since I've been on the
Right.
board,
But not
We've been
all
doing
items
both.
are action items. That's my point, Commissioner Scott.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think it's more to allow for participation or the opportunity for participation
Yeah.
on anything that we're talking about. That's kind of been our practice.
Okay.
But certainly before any action item, we would want to provide for public comment.
Well, we're required, yeah, before we
Yeah.
take a vote, yeah. But
Eric, do you have any other
No,
background?
now I'm thinking about it. So haven't we generally been taking public comment on discussion items as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we have.
That's been the
That's my
practice.
point.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's generally been the practice. I think you're allowed to, if you want it, and we've just, I don't think we've seriously considered it here to require people to do all their public comment up front before, on every item. So
Okay.
this is the way the Health Service Board has always run as a matter of practice. And I'm not hearing any real, desire to want to curtail that.
Or necessarily to codify it. I mean, I guess the issue is vis-a-vis Claire's comment, which is correct, is that we're not actually bound by our policy to open it up. We had some items that were going to fill a 4-hour meeting and were all action items, then we might actually curtail public comment after an educational item or something like that, just because of that. So I'm in favor of this and not codifying our public comment after every agenda item necessarily, but we will still continue the same practice as it is. I think I like that.
I would
Thank you.
concur.
That's kind of my point. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're on page 26 then, which is the education policy. Page 27. There are no changes on 26, none on 27. 28. None. 29. 30. And then we get into a series of appendices. And the first appendix, Larry, you're recommending that we delete this. And I just raised a question as to why.
Yeah, just simply, this is for suggested conferences, seminars, webinars. Specific to this, Wisconsin is a banned state according to our 12X requirements. So maybe we just need to find some time to find an alternative for conferences, recommended conference.
We don't always go to Wisconsin.
Let me just comment. Was asked by our contracts and finance team to sign off on 12X waiver. And the justification for the waiver is that the board desires the services of this organization and uses them. And so I would ask if that is the wish of the board, and then I will sign off on it. But I didn't want to presume without talking to you, because these are the kind of things that do hit the headlines on occasion. I have no control. But if it's authorized, it's authorized. But I do want you to know that it would be a request for an exemption to the 12X rules about banned states, doing business in banned states.
And
We have a couple
yeah.
others that we do this on occasion. I think Michael Visconti is on this call, could perhaps tell us if we have a few other 12X waivers, but I wanted to fully inform you before I made that request and give you the option to not want to do it.
And what is the 12X?
It's the ordinance that does not allow the city to do business with certain entities because of their local policies around discriminatory policies around LGBTQ issues. Michael, are you listening? Can you?
Doesn't it ban travel to certain
Yes.
states?
Yeah, there's
Right.
travel
Is it a
bans doing
banned state?
business. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
so
Michael
that,
Visconti.
yeah.
Okay,
Yes, it is banned. The states are
All right,
banned
can
due
we have
to,
one person at a time? Michael, will you explain what 12X is, which was Commissioner Zvansky's initial question, and then we can talk about whether we're talking about getting subscription. Does ban business mean all forms of business, including travel, or what have you? So please tell us the background here.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Apologies for the overlap there. This is Michael Visconti, Contracts Manager for the San Francisco Health Service System. The 12X concerns states that have discriminatory practices against either or both LGBT individuals, or with regards to restrictions on abortion laws. It is 12X. It is codified in our city charter. It is also one that is updated periodically, with states either becoming less restrictive and being removed from the 12X list or being added to the 12X list. So this is a constantly moving target that we are always keeping ourselves well informed of, so that we know which states they are. In this case, Wisconsin was added recently to the list, which is why this was not raised earlier, because it was not one of the banned states.
All right. And does it mean doing any kind of business, or is it applicable to travel, or both?
It does restrict travel. 12X.4 governs travel. 12X5 governs contracting. And we'd be happy to kind of present a more, kind of, again, a detailed approach to this. But yes, it does cover travel.
All right. Well, to my working knowledge, we have not asked this organization to actually put on. They do provide a individual what they call employer conference or webinars or those kinds of things. You can contract with them to provide the content, like we did for our fiduciary thing. They do that kind of business. But most of what we have interacted with them on is that we've attended. Most recently, I attended one of their conferences that happened to be held here in San Francisco. I didn't travel to Wisconsin, but they brought the conference, benefits conference for trustees, to San Francisco. And we also, until recently, we've been receiving monthly or a magazine from them, as well as their annual training catalog, where they show that they're doing training courses of all kinds around the country. So I guess my specific question, are we talking about any kind of service that this organization would provide just because they're located in Wisconsin?
That is correct.
That's what this
Let me
12X
read Absolutely, Commissioner. Let me read directly from 12X5 on contracting.
Okay.
It is very unambiguous. I just had to pull it
Okay.
up here for everyone. 12X5, Section A states, the city shall not enter into any contract with a contractor that has its United States headquarters in a state on the covered state list, or where any or all of the work on the contract will be performed in a state on the covered state list. Obviously, there are exemptions, caveats, waiver provisions, and things like that, which Executive Director Yant spoke to. Again, we use them very rarely, and it is typically something that we only use in the circumstance where there is no substitute service of a comparable nature, similar to when you have to do a sole source. But in this case, I think this is the discussion item for this reason, is whether or not we want to continue doing that and proceed with submitting a waiver to the 12X.
All right, the commissioners, committee commissioners, do you have any comments or reactions to what you've had clarified at this point?
This is Commissioner Zvansky, and if you can hear me,
Yes.
I actually have, we have historically, at least for all the years that I served on the board previously, we attended these conferences. Never went to Wisconsin because they've held these conferences in other places. We've traveled to them, and sometimes we're lucky when they hold them in San Francisco. This is a unique organization. I don't know of another organization that is comparable, and I'm sure maybe we can explore that. But the IFEBP has a long established history and expertise in the field of benefits that involve us. They also, the retirement board also attends their conferences, and they put on a number of usually the conferences that are held deal with both retirement and health. And
Yes.
so I think we need to take a look to see what the retirement board is doing as well, although they have some other options that are specific to retirement and investing and such.
All right.
But historically, I think I'd like to see something continue. I really do respect and want the waivers. Excuse me. I like the discrimination, and I like making the point with a number of entities as well as states with regard to discrimination. But I don't know that this organization is, that we can persuade them to move to a different state to prevent that. But I think we can let them know that it's problematic for us, and we don't know how long our support or our involvement in their information can continue under the circumstances. But I think it's a significant organization, and unless we can find a viable alternative, I think we're a little bit stuck.
All right.
If
Commissioner Follansby,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doctor.
Commissioner Follansby, do you have any observations or comments?
No additional
Based on-
comments or observations. I would be, I don't think that we should be necessarily at this meeting trying to add or limit this list without further consideration. So I would say we leave it as it is.
All right. Abby?
Well, one of the questions that we've queried is the actual utilization by our board of this service. And we'll be doing that more formally in the educational survey that we're about to do. But I do think that I will weigh the utilization against the sort of risk of creating an issue around a 12X waiver and inform the board as such, because it's my impression, and I may be wrong, you may all have attended lots of classes in this last year or two, but it's not my impression that anyone has. And granted, the travel piece has been curtailed because of the pandemic, but they've made many, many, many webinars free, and we've promoted them to you and such. And so if I think we really have to think about it from, do we really use it? And I know Dr. Follansby and I attended together a conference in New Orleans a couple of years ago and walked away with the impression that it was much more geared towards the retirement pension community than it was the health community. The health stuff was almost secondary and frankly, not the quality that I was accustomed to in attending these types of conferences. And so I found that you make more use out of the ongoing webinars through our memberships with Catalyst for Payment Reform, the Pacific Group Business Group on Health, and other things. So I just want to, in the spirit of full disclosure, I just wanted to let you know how I'm thinking about this, that, I think we just have to put it in that context.
All right. Well, I would recommend that we, at this point, I don't know that all of that is going to be done before we might be presenting the terms of reference to the board. And what I'm hesitant to do is to say, okay, let's leave it. And then we find that, we've got these other constraints and that we've got to get a waiver. The utilization isn't where it was or isn't being utilized now by members of the board. So I guess I'm inclined to say that we need to delete it for this portion, leave Appendix A, the title there, suggested conferences and seminars, leave the appendix, and that we put the page in as being blank until we can get this clarified. That would be a suggestion I would make to the committee.
I guess I understand what you're saying, but I guess the question is, would it take another governance committee meeting in order to insert, if not this organization, another organization? I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is a very thoughtful plan from our executive director on how to evaluate this. And I think that many of us might be able to anticipate the outcome, because I concur with everything she said about my impression of that meeting, as well as the fact that it was really geared to the self-funded health plans and not to the government agencies. And they were very clear.
Yes, that's true.
And so I think I know what the outcome will be, but I don't know that I want to prejudge that. So I guess my tendency would be to leave it in to avoid another meeting if we decide to leave it in or put it back in.
One other thought is that when you think this is a reference page that staff put together for the board. It's not necessarily a part of the terms of reference, if you will. It's a reference page that we would be up. I think Natalie created it as just a tool that people can use. So you may consider that it is not actually an official policy document.
That'd be great. If that's the case, that'd be great. And I have no problem then deleting it as on the reference page. That'd be fine.
And, consistent with what this committee decides to do today, there's no need to have another committee meeting. You can sort of delegate. And if there is some change that comes up before the full board, we can note it and the full board can vote. I mean, generally, the whole idea of the committee is to go through as many small details without having to involve the full board. But if we have one or two, substantive changes since this committee meeting, we can note it at the full board. And if the full board wants to, if changes get made, I think we would have to schedule another. We would just put it on the next meeting again, because I do think you have to note the changes 10 days before the board meeting.
So let me be clear as to where we are at this point. Are we leaving the language as it's printed here, or are we deleting it?
I would
knowing that the executive director is talking about a process that will clarify this.
Yeah, and I would say that as long as we're waiting for a process to be completed with an outcome, that might include some other organizations that should appear in this reference list, I would say leave it as it is. And then do everything on this page that we need to do at some later date in whatever way is appropriate, whether it's a reference page or whatever. I would say leave it as it is right now.
I concur with that. Since it's part of the appendix and was an added page, it seems to me we can deal with it more easily in the future. So I'd say leave it as is, and we can, pending other amendments or
Okay.
additions.
All right, and I suggest some guidance to the executive director that as we are going through this review, someone out there might get the bright idea, let's go look at the terms of reference because we've got this now as a part of our public agenda and so on and so on. And should you be asked about it, I would request that you outline to them what you've described to us, that we're undergoing a review. We're looking at our educational plan for the next year with the board, so on and so on. And pending the outcome of that, we will make a determination. So
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
it is going to be a, because we have not paid our dues at this time. We are in
right,
arrears. And we haven't gotten any, I don't think they've switched off anything yet, but at some point they will.
yes,
And because it has to be a very active decision for us to make, and it's not a financial decision. It's not a large
no,
amount of money. It really is do we wish to be in compliance with the city's regulations around this, or do we have a significant enough justification, and in this case, that would be utilization of this
mhm.
service to ask for a waiver?
All right. And I'm just saying that should you get a query internally, I would say on behalf of the committee that we are encouraging you to outline the process that you've described for us, that we've had a discussion about it, we're looking into it, and we will make a decision shortly.
Yeah.
If someone looks at, we might get some bright light who looks at the terms of reference. They haven't touched it in 3 years, but now that it happens to be a subject matter, here we go.
Well, and they don't like what's going on in Wisconsin.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying
Not
that,
many people I know do. So, yeah.
No, and
okay,
I have not received anything since I've been back on the board. I noticed that the publication that I used to receive from them, I've not received, and maybe because we're in arrears. But I would also like some feedback from our colleagues with regard to the information they send us, because if it is no longer at the level of expertise that we need, and it's geared more toward retirement, I think that that Director Yant's comments about other educational opportunities and agencies is well founded, and we may need to make some changes down the road. I'd like to see that.
yes, all right. So we're now at page 32, board member reference manual.
And Chair Scott, I just would like to note that Commissioner Breslin did leave at 12:20, just for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
There are no proposed changes there. Appendix 3, beginning on page 33, travel policy.
We're in
And on page
compliance, right?
35. Pardon me?
As long as we're in compliance with the city's travel policy, we should be
Well,
okay.
we're looking at, I thought about that, Commissioner Zvansky, and I said, if anybody's going to tell us that there needs to be changes in this policy, it's going to be Larry Liu. And I didn't see him add or subtract anything because ultimately, he's our finance guy. So that's why I'm saying.
Yeah, I saw no reason to change it.
Okay, thank you, Larry, for that affirmation. Page 4. Or I mean, appendix 4 on page 36, excuse me. This is the education resource page. And all of these highlighted bluish areas on this page are live links that go to these various websites. Larry has added, I think, 3 more that he's suggesting be added.
Right, and just to,
add some formatting issues, which we will pick up on page 37.
so Catalyze is the catalyst for payment reform. IHA is the Institute for Integrated Health Care.
Yeah, I think those are on there except for IHA. We can add.
Yeah.
Okay. So IHA would be the one that would be added.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much is publicly available there. We'll evaluate that.
Okay. Let's move on then to the page 38, which is the board performance evaluation policy. I did not see any need to edit this or make any amendments to what is we're currently doing. We're currently following this process for the evaluation of the board. And as a reminder, your inputs are due by December 10th.
Yeah.
Hello, board members. Okay. Let's go then to the performance policy, or yes, policy 204 on page 40, executive director evaluation policy. Again, I think we're doing all of these steps. My question is why we included the information on page 42, 43, and 44, I believe, yes, 44. I think that was done. That's the actual evaluation form. I think this was actually done because we were new into the process of the executive director performance review. But I don't know that these 3 pages are necessary any longer, because we know what we are doing. We have gone through this now three times with the current executive director, and at least twice with the prior executive director, may have been 3 times as well. So I'm recommending that we don't have a form that we're actually using for the board's self-evaluation in this document. So it would be, I guess, my view that either we include both as appendices to these policies, or take them both out. That's my recommendation.
I would recommend we delete. And I totally agree with your rationale. And I think that the policy is what's important, not how we necessarily achieve that policy in terms of the wording of the evaluation itself. So I would concur with deleting this form through page 44.
This is
Commissioner Zvansky?
Yes, I concur with that as well, since I think the actual forms can change.
Yeah.
And we need the ability to allow them to change and not quantify them here.
Okay.
I concur.
Now we're up to page 45.
Well, I'd like to ask another question, and
I'm sorry.
If I may.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to stir the pot or create problems where I don't see them, but what I may have missed is we have not allowed for any opportunity for staff or senior staff to provide us any input with regard to their evaluation of the executive director.
No, we do. We do.
Oh, I missed it.
And we had that discussion in our prior committee meeting when we were going through our review for this year prior to actually the kickoff of the timeline.
Yeah, I thought we did. Okay.
Yes, and so the direct reports to Abby that are being solicited or included in the evaluation process of the chief financial officer and the chief operating officer.
Right.
Those 2.
Okay.
And we make that as that's been a point of discussion each year as we are reviewing the process.
Okay, I thought we did, but I didn't see it. Thank you. Appreciate the
Okay.
clarification.
So now we're on page 45, monitoring and reporting. And if I'm not mistaken, the last time this was done, the appendix portion, the scheduled reports, was the recommendation coming from, I believe, the then executive director. And so I would ask Abby, are there any of these reports that we are either not doing, don't need to list here, so forth and so on?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Scott. We, we've all had this experience that, you thought you read this thing before and we read it again this year. And Holly and I were just discussing how we need to ensure that we're actualizing some of this and there may be some things missing. So this is another one of those kind of appendices that, may not be as evergreen as the other policy documents are. And we might want to, sever it from the terms of reference policy, but have a schedule of reports that we work towards every year. Because I think one of the things that is not on here, that there is some language that we looked at earlier that we may want to come back to, which is, what are the size of the contracts that we manage? Because the sizes continue to increase, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to review all of, approve all of them. But we could give I think we are in a position of wanting to give you a full report on all the contracting activity that we do on an annual basis, because it's become quite significant. So that was one thing that we talked about, and then just trying to be sure that we have all of these reports scheduled and that staff is fully informed and able to provide these on time. I think we do that, but we haven't sat down and looked at it that way. So I found this very helpful, and adding the contracting piece would be the one that I think we would be interested in doing.
All right, so my recommendation would be that Larry went through and formatted the table. I'm going to make a request to the executive director to review the listing and update it as needed. But that would be a change that we would submit at a later date. We'll leave the appendix as it is, and like the one with Wisconsin, as you make those changes or revise this appendix, then we would come back and incorporate it.
Okay.
That it's okay with Commissioner Fallonsy and Commissioner Zvansky.
Yes, it's fine with me.
Okay.
Fine with me as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next, we're at page 48, and that is the communications policy. Any changes on page 48?
None.
Okay.
None for me either.
Page 49.
None.
Page 50.
None.
None.
Page 51. We're now into the service provider and vendor selection policy, and Larry has come in and wants to put or plan insurance carriers or plan administrators as we did in the prior policy.
I would accept that. We've already discussed this in another section. I think that's reasonable.
Absolutely.
And this is where we have the cap on the
yes. Contracts. It's item 4 in the list under A, and of course that needs to be formatted. We say third-party administrators retained for services in connection with non-charter benefits and with a contract value in excess, we say here, of $200,000. Director Yan, are you proposing that be expanded or lowered or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think we either are going to every couple of years just bump this number up because of the fact that the world's more expensive and we're bigger. Um, or, um, or we increase the, or we just don't put a cap on it. So if we want to put a cap on it, I would suggest that we put it at 500 for both items 4 and 5.
Okay.
Um,
Are there objections?
Was there a reason this was set originally? I mean, I think we have to specify a cap. I think we can't leave it open. I just didn't know where the 200,000 came from, if that had to do with city contracts or a prudent number.
It was in the matter of the terms of reference, the last time there, I think it was at $50,000 or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
The last time this was reviewed, it might have been 100, but it was a very low number. And so it was sort of, okay, well, what would be a reasonable number? And it sort of like doubled or quadrupled whatever that baseline number was. And that's how we got to 200K.
Okay,
But it was the same type of input that you just heard from Director Yant.
right.
We are dealing with things that are more, things cost more now and so on. And so, uh, I agree with you that we need to have a cap. And so maybe we put it at something twice the size of what's in the current policy and
Thank
let
you.
it go at that.
That's what I sort of recall, but I needed the confirmation. And I actually think that what Executive Director Yant suggests, that 500,000 might be the reasonable figure for the day,
Mhm.
for the time.
Right. Commissioner Follansby?
Yeah, that's fine with me. This is a stupid question, but could someone outline the medical executive director as opposed to the executive director?
Oh,
I
yeah.
I believe that is in our the charter for this commission and service, that there was a medical director at one point, or
Yes, for many
what
years.
have you,
Yes.
many, many years ago. And we have the authority,
Yeah.
if you would, to appoint one if we need one,
Okay.
but we haven't needed one.
Does
We
any-
haven't, I think we were, it was at a time either we were providing medical services to employees or planned to.
It
I'm
was
not sure,
part of
but
the
it's in.
city plan. And I think it went along with what we were determining for city plan, because I remember Dr. Abe Bernstein. I don't think there's anyone here who remembers Abe Bernstein, but I
No.
do. And he was our medical director for many, 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 many years until his passing. So we haven't had, in essence, a medical director since then. And Dr. Follansby, in my mind, I fall back to you and your medical expertise, and feel that when we need that kind of additional medical input, that we are very fortunate to have a physician on our board that helps to provide that, in addition to the information that Director Yant is always able to bring to us as well. So, but historically, this board did have a a medical director. I don't think it was executive director, it was medical director. And it is part of our charter, as I recall. Yeah.
Let's just bring it up, because thank you very much for your kind comments, but my position is mandated by the charter as a physician. So that is,
Oh, then you're it.
and so I guess the question is, I mean, I don't mind seeing it, but why do we include somebody who we don't actually have or don't have any intention of planning, or does it sort of handicap us in case we want a medical director at some point? I just don't see it.
No, it sounds like you're it.
Well, but I'm not. I'm not the medical director. I'm a board member.
But the point is that it's in the charter.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'd have to amend the charter.
Okay.
Take it
Never
out
mind.
at this point.
That's a vote
But
of the public.
that's an artifact
Yeah.
of a different configuration of service to our.
Okay. Never mind.
We're not doing that. We're not going down that road. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think
So we're
Eric,
agreed to increase the authorization to 500K.
Yes.
Is that correct? All right.
And it sounds like
Let us
Eric
move.
has no dispute with the discussion we've just had.
No, he didn't have any input to that.
Good.
Page 52, 52,
Two.
yes. It gets into the blackout period and all of that stuff that we need to adhere to, contracts and so forth. 53 and 54 is the rest of the policy on service provider and vendor selection, that policy.
No suggestions.
Okay.
No
The next
suggestions.
policy begins on page 55. We're getting there. We're getting closer.
Yep. I'm also,
Strategic planning.
did we ask, excuse me, did we ask Michael Visconti to review any of the contracts language? Or do we-
Not explicitly,
Do we
but
need
we
to?
can
Maybe
request
not.
that he do so. Any place that we're talking about contracting, Executive Director Yant, would you have Michael just go through? We've had this one discussion on 12X, but if there are other contracting topics that we need to be aware of in the terms, if you'd have him review that just for be sure that we're in compliance with whatever the city is calling for.
Yeah, he's on the call listening and, is always really helpful with consulting. And in fact, I did talk to him yesterday about this notion of having an annual contracts report.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if there's anything else that he sees after we're finished here today, we'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So page 55 is strategic planning policy. Nothing on that one or 54. I'm sorry. Got my pages mixed up here somehow.
55, then 56.
55, 56. Yes, I turned my pages backwards. I'm sorry.
I have the same problem, sorry.
So 56, annual planning process. And then it concludes on 57. Anything in there?
Not from my standpoint.
Okay, now we're down to 209, the investment fund policy. Don't touch it.
Right.
As we know, we had, I raised a question 3 years ago that rippled all the way up to God knows where in the financial community of the city. So leave this alone.
When Commissioner Scott speaks, everyone listens.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly did.
God
I had
knows.
no idea.
God has spoken, God knows. But I'm
Yeah.
sure, because as you mentioned that, I was thinking of our treasurer, and I'm sure he'd absolutely love to come visit us anytime we wanted.
Yes, that's the point. And that's where we finally left it.
Yeah.
They would be on call to us if we had questions in the future.
Yeah, and they've
And I
been
would just
very
like to
good.
leave this, I'd like to leave this as it is.
I'm with you, amen.
Okay. So then that moves us to page item 64, which is the contingency reserve policy. And this is where Larry has conferred with Aon, submitted, I presume, his changes to them, and they said that yes, they're fine with them. Eric had suggested that we needed that type of review. So unless there is, we will go through this page by page, and then Larry, I'd ask you to kind of comment on where you've made the changes and what they were. So on page 64.
Sure. Really, this is just clarifying language that the contingency reserve policy applies to the flex and self-funded healthcare plans. Just some edits, just to clean that up a little bit. We want to clarify that the self-funded and one additional edit that Mike Clark suggested making is to keep the order in which these bullet pointed plans appear to be based on the magnitude of membership. So I'll reorder this to have the HMO first, then the PPO, then the dental PPO plan. The dental PPO plan, and just putting a clarifier here that it's for actives only, because the others are fully insured.
All right, so you're going to list the HMO first,
Mhm.
the PPO second, and the dental third.
Yes,
And you're clarifying that the dental PPO is for actives only. Is that correct?
that's correct.
All right. Anything else on that page? I don't believe so. 65. I don't think there was anything that you suggested here. And with that, are there any edits from committee members or changes or questions? Hearing none, we'll now at page policy, the stabilization policy, 211.
Right.
Larry.
Right. So this is where I'm trying to standardize some of the terminology in the policy to the actual application of these policies. So we don't refer to stabilization by itself. We refer to it as rate stabilization. So that's why I wanted to add that in there. And then just generally, instead of talking about it, if the revenue is greater than expenses, I want to call it a surplus, not a underwriting gain necessarily. So we wanted to reference it in terms of surpluses and shortfalls. And the policy for rate stabilization takes either a surplus or a shortfall, and then spreads it over the subsequent 3 years.
That's correct.
That's how it's. So rather than saying into the following year, because you can imagine the expectation that all the surpluses are spread into the following year. So that's why I changed that reference to say future years.
Okay.
And then let's see, the second paragraph really just standardizing instead of using terms of gains and excesses to just surplus. The next edit is clarifying that this applies to flex and self-funded plans. These bullet points Mike Clark did recommend reordering it so that it's HMO first, PPO second, and then the dental PPO third. And I think that's it for this page.
Okay.
I support all of those. Those make sense. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So it then gets into definitions of the contingency reserve.
Actually, yeah. So one note here. So the other recommendation is to delete the reference of contingency reserve and IBNR in this policy, since there is self-standing policies with regard to contingency reserves and IBNR. So I'll delete that because it's a little confusing to have the reference to those policies inside this policy.
Okay, and that would take, so the contingency reserve margin is intended to immunize that. That would go out. The next sentence, reserve for estimated claims have been incurred by members in Yachnet, not yet processed.
Right. That's a statement of an IBNR, which is the next policy actually.
Okay.
So just to make it cleaner reading.
Yeah.
Right. Including unknown claims. So all of that would go, correct?
Right.
And then it says methodology next on the next page. That would be deleted. So are you saying that the formulas and so forth that follow?
No, that was a straight reference.
Plan rates for year X1 and so forth and so on.
No, this would stay. I would recommend keeping this. So the suggested edits here are, as you notice, the third bullet, which I highlighted, it references remember, we're right in the middle of the rate stabilization policy, which is applicable to the flex funded and self-funded plans. So the third
Yes.
bullet here talks about one of the 5 components of setting rates, and the current statement says estimated cost of any fully insured. What it meant to say is really some fixed components. So it's confusing to say there's a fully insured component inside of flex and self-insured policy.
Okay.
So fixed components include capitation, administrative costs, those types of things. There
Right.
was also a reference in here about the EGWIP
Yes.
premium. EGWIP is the employer group waiver program for Medicare. And
Yes.
our Medicare plans are not self or flex
Doing that
funded.
anymore.
Right. So
Okay.
those are the main edits there
All right.
on the methodology.
Okay. Are there any questions around this or these edits or changes?
It seems, if I understand, that all these are basically just to make sure that we're consistent with what we're doing. They're not, you're not
Yes.
proposing any new operational or methodology. And so I appreciate all this and I support this.
Okay.
Could
Going
there
further
be,
down, it says,
I'm sorry, could we get a little bit more of an explanation of why we're using the term surplus versus excess? The reason I'm asking is that a lot of times when people see the term surplus, their ears go up and they think it's like extra money that they can use for something. Although excess says, gee, we don't need it, it's over what we use. Just in terms of terminology, I'd like something that,
Larry?
Sure. So that's the terminology I settled into using with regard to all the financial reports and the sort of regular reports that I've read through the city and county in terms of revenue is really sources of funds, and your expenses are expenditures or uses of funds, and whatever's the difference is surplus. And if you didn't have enough sources of funds to fund your uses, you have a shortfall, and so you need to fill in the shortfall. So trying to standardize the terminology in terms of that. So
got it.
All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Larry.
Okay. Nothing more on 67 beyond flex or self-funded plans. And then the example with, you've changed the name for the city plan to our current vendor. Page 68. Formatting changes. And again, it's, would you pick up with allocation of cumulative reserve, access, or shortfall? So that should say allocation of cumulative reserve, surplus, or shortfall. Is that not right?
cumulative surplus, right, or shortfall. So as opposed to
Yeah.
excess, you're just striking out the
Okay.
word excess.
All right. So then the rest of that, you care to clarify that?
Striking out the word, striking out the references to Medicare, because the EGWIP is no longer partial or flex funded, and deleting the reference to fully insured premium to reference fixed components that I defined above.
All right.
Can I just ask a point of information? Did we really not review this in 2019? It says that this is the last amended in January 8th, despite the fact the policy is reviewed at least every 3 years. It looks like we missed some time. Is that really true? Did we miss this? Does anyone know?
Well, it says that the board review this policy every 3 years. And I believe
We did review this. I think this is, we
It's a
didn't
typo.
hear. Yeah, and I know we were
Yes,
trying to
this has
get
been,
rid of,
it's like 2 years ago, if I recall correctly, that we reviewed this.
yeah, we reviewed everything at the same
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
that's what I thought, but it seems odd to have it documented, misdocumented, but it's fine.
Well, it may have been, and this is another one of these administrative steps, that we didn't change it in the terms of reference. We did it at the board meeting, but we didn't come back and actually pull the old document and put in the new document. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think you're correct, Commissioner Scott. That's my recollection. That we
So
didn't,
we as a board reviewed it
Yeah.
because we were applying funds to help stabilize rates and all the rest of it. But I don't know that we actually went back to the terms of reference in the policies to actually change document according to what we acted on as a board when we reviewed it 2 years ago.
yeah. I think we took a deep breath.
Yes.
Knowing that going through the
and
terms of references is a challenge.
right. And so the next one is the 69, the IBNR reserve policy methodology. Larry?
Right, so just added some clarifying language and deleted some verbiage that didn't add value. So that's how I started the sentence. And the addition here about a claim is submitted and fully settled is to clarify that the claims are submitted and then fully settled, as opposed to just a full settlement, because there's a recognition that there will be claims coming in. They need to be submitted and then fully settled. So that's maybe a technicality that might be lost on most folks, but I
Yes.
just want to put that in.
All right.
And yeah, and that's really the substantive changes there.
And will you be reordering the plans as listed as you did in the other policy?
Yes, yeah. And fixing typos along like self-funded, there should be a hyphen in self-funded.
Yes. Right. Okay. So we then get into definitions.
And this is where previously these definitions were found also in the stabilization, and I removed them because they're redundant with this policy.
Right.
Other than that, no changes.
16. 7, 8. Okay. And then I for some reason, yes, but just stop right there, if you would, Holly, for a moment. Review of this policy.
Yeah, if you can go up, Holly. I think I know what you're reference. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, there you go. Stop.
All right. So then go to the next page.
I think this
Top of the next page, Holly.
This is
There is
beyond
none.
us.
I have for some reason page 70.
We just looked at page 70. It says 76, but mine says 70.
Yeah.
This is the
Okay,
board
fine.
secretary.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just to clarify, there's in the PDF, the pages do appear differently than the printed version.
Yes.
And that's because the
Got it.
printed version had actual tabs. So it
Yes.
did come out differently, all the same exact pages. So Commissioner Scott, the last page that you were referring to, page 70, it starts with based on the change in costs. Is that what you're
Yes,
reading?
right.
Okay, so let's
Yes.
just check, because I believe
Yeah. And
there it
that's at
is.
the top of page 76. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. I was getting really wildly confused. Okay.
Another formatting change that'll be considered, yes. So it all
Okay.
lines up.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So is Eric still with us? Yes.
Here's
I am.
You are. Are there any additions, edits, corrections to the to this document called Charter and Administrative Code sections applicable to the Health Service Board?
No, I'm not aware of any changes that have been made since I did that presentation.
Okay, so we will leave that as done. Thank you. I just wanted to get your verbal authorization
Right.
on the record. Thank you, Eric.
I
All
think,
right,
although now
and
you
that-
said, I do think there may be something in process listing the eligible. I will check. There's nothing substantive. They may have, I can never know whether they've added a commission or two in the last
Okay,
5 years. And I will check whether that has gotten passed yet.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'll just for the record, Eric will check
But there's nothing
and
substantive.
confirm with Holly as
Yeah.
she's putting together the final document. All right. The last section are the health system's rules. And my understanding is that our COO has updated this document. And again, Stephen, it's one of those questions. This is we update that document every year.
Yeah.
Member rules, and we didn't update it in this document.
Yeah.
And we have to remember to do that
Yeah.
because we've had a new members rules for 2020 and 21.
Yeah, I agree. I totally get that.
Okay.
And board,
So my understand. Go ahead, Holly, please.
thank you, Commissioner Scott, or Chair Scott. This is Holly Lopez, the board secretary. To note that at our upcoming full board meeting next Thursday, the 9th, the annual review of the member rules and the cafeteria plans are up before the full board to take action on, at which point in this process, I can take the approved member rules and add into this, this document.
All right.
Great.
And you will then update the table accordingly with the appendix A and B for the benefit covered years.
Yes, I can include all of that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
include all of that. All right. By my lights, we have completed the review of the terms of reference and policies for the HSS system. Is there any, I'm willing to entertain a motion that we
No.
accept the changes as discussed. And the question is whether we will need a meeting to review all of them before we submit it to the full board, i.e. a January meeting. That's the point for discussion.
That was going to be my question. Do we need another meeting to review it, or would we be satisfied receiving the edited copy?
Well, I move that we accept all the suggested changes and that we review the document, but not schedule a second meeting to follow up, because I think the changes should be relatively easily confirmed. That was a discussion, that we not have a second meeting, period.
I'll go along with that, unless we find something that we feel requires it, but I think we don't need that second meeting. And that we get the materials in advance so we can re-review the edits.
Well, in order to facilitate that, what I would ask of Holly then is to send out a edited version of the final so that we'll know where the changes were inserted. See what I'm saying? Just like this was done with Larry Lou today.
And
That's
Eric.
the one that you would circulate to us so we would be able to see clearly, okay, this is where we had a discussion, this was the wording change.
We
See what
also
I'm saying?
need Eric's. Don't we also need Eric's?
Yeah, what we need to do is we need to get one document. I already have a call into Holly on this. We're gonna take everything. It's gonna go
Yes.
into one document. It'll be a non-privileged document. We will get it to you to timely review. Hopefully it'll be acceptable and we can move forward at the next appropriate full board meeting. And
In
if for some
January.
reason something is, we need to have another meeting, then somebody can, figure out a way to get that done.
Well, the idea would be though that what you're going to circulate to us is the edited version of that one document, so we can see
Exactly.
where the edits are.
Yeah, most likely without any comments, just a straight red line draft. This is what's going
Right.
to get presented.
Yes. Are we clear, commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we're moving, I want to restate the motion just for the record. We're moving that we accept all of the edits and incorporate the discussion points into a final red line draft, which will be circulated to the committee prior to the January board meeting.
Correct.
That's the sense of the motion if someone wants to move that.
I would make that motion
All right.
as
Is
stated.
there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we accept all of the edits and the points of discussion and incorporate them into a red line version, which will be circulated to the committee in sufficient time for review prior to the next board meeting in January.
Next
Is
full
there any
board
further
meeting.
full board meeting in January? Is there any further discussion? Is there any public comment? So we need to go back, Holly, to our public comment page and do that before we vote.
Thank you, Chair Scott. I'll pull up our visual instructions and read them aloud. Chair Scott, can you confirm you can see the
Yes,
instructions?
I can.
Thank you. So public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the board president deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. As a reminder, a caller may ask questions of the policy body, but there is no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. When your 3 minutes have ended, I will thank you for your comment. You'll be placed back on mute, and the moderator will unmute the next caller. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available by dialing the number on the screen. The dial-in number is 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. When prompted, use access code 2494-493-5372. Again, 2494-493-5372. And then press pound and pound again. You will enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line and dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For all those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. We'll now give some time for our moderator to see if there are any public comments in the queue.
Board Secretary, we have no callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed.
All right, thank you. We're now ready to vote on the main motion that's pending before us regarding a red line version being submitted to the committee prior to the January full board health service board meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. All right. With that, I believe we can adjourn unless I have missed something, Secretary.
That is correct, Chair Scott. That was our last
All right.
agenda item.
We'll adjourn. I'll adjourn this meeting by wishing each and every one of you a very happy holiday season. I know that we have a board meeting prior to that, but now that I'm chairing this meeting, I'll make that wish and defer to the president to make a similar sentiment at the general board meeting.
I can quote you then at that meeting. I don't have to make any comment myself.
No, that'll be up to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay.
Sounds
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you both for your participation and all of the staff work, both from Eric and Larry and Michael and Abby, to lead up to this point. This
And
made this
Holly.
very
and
And
Holly.
Holly, forgetting Holly's done a great
Holly,
job.
principally.
Holly's trying to ring the cats.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. Plus our tech support. Thank you so much for that
Yes.
tech
Great.
support.
So thank you so much for bringing this meeting together today, and we were able to get through it in about 2+ hours, which
Good.
is very good. So thank you,
Okay.
and take care,
Good.
everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, and adjournment at 3:12 p.m.